Hey everybody, Josh Sheridan here with the Barely Legal Podcast.
They demand my alter ego, but I won't go because of you.
On today's show, we have Jeff Dominguez, or Jeffrey Dominguez, as some of you may know him. I have kind of run into him at different points on social media, originally through his music involvement, but more recently through the brew world, as I've started to kind of delve into interviewing all of the luminaries in the local scene. So I think when I first met you, you were working at a different place than you're working right now. What's the current place you're at?
So before I was at Tampa Bay.
That's where you were when I think we first started chatting.
Yeah. And then now I'm at Brewbus Brewing or Florida Avenue Brewing.
Okay.
We produce for both of those brands
Okay.
out of the one production spot. We have a new facility opening up in Wesley Chapel. It's already running like as a restaurant tap
Right.
room, but we're not moving liquid there just yet.
Gotcha. Now I'm going to ask you to just get a little bit closer to the mic, just because.
sorry.
No, that's good. I've just my Mike Sinclair, who does my production, always gives me shit.
Fair enough.
He sends me pictures of people, and he's like, "You should be this close, not this close." Anyway, so now did I see that you were at Cigar City at some point?
Yeah, back in like 2013, 2014, I worked in their tasting room.
That seems to be kind of the launch pad for a lot of people locally.
Sure, yeah. It a lot of people consider it like the university of like Tampa craft beer. Or
Well, was that
like
kind of
that,
the biggest craft beer show in town originally, or
I mean, back in the day, yeah, they were the first ones in the area to really, one, get into the distribution game,
Sure.
but two, embrace adjuncts.
Yeah.
And
Okay, explain to me embrace adjuncts.
So I mean, adjuncts are anything other than, what's in like your Reinskapel, your purity laws of
Okay.
like, water, grain, yeast, hops, and that's it.
So kind of thinking outside the box, to use a played out.
Right. Let me spin it on wood. Let me throw some cocoa nibs in it. Let's make this taste like a dessert.
Sure.
Let's make this, something that is more than the sum of its parts.
Right.
I wouldn't say not beer. It was like, it is more than the sum of its parts.
Backing up a little bit, are
Yeah.
you, has beer been a part of your life since, drinking age or before? I mean, has it always been something that you're into, or is it something that you've kind of grown into?
I think it's something I grew into, honestly, when I think about it. I played music. I've been playing music like in and around like the area since I was about 14. I'm 32 now.
Are you from Tampa originally?
Oh, born and raised.
Okay, where'd you go to school?
Tampa Bay Technical High School.
Okay.
Dowdell, Middle Magnet before that, and then Claremelle.
Big family, middle-sized family, small family?
I would say it was pretty average, 5-piece band.
Yeah. So including your parents or in addition to your parents?
Mom, dad, 2 brothers, and then I have a sister as well. But
Where do you fall in that grouping age-wise?
kind of middle child.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 2 older, and then by all they say middle child, right? Because it's like I'm 47 minutes older than my twin.
Yeah,
So it's like
yeah.
a running joke that you're like older.
It's
than
like when you get to be my age, you'll understand.
Yeah,
47 minutes from now.
by all technicality, I'm the older one.
So Dominguez is clearly of Latin descent.
Yeah.
So what's your derivation of your family? Is it
Cuban?
Cuban? Both sides, or
Just the one. It's a really interesting sort of thing locally, because I mean it definitely feels very like almost whitewashed, for lack of a better word. Just because growing up, so my dad's Cuban, moved here when he was like, I don't know, 5 or something like that. They went to Jersey, and then they moved to Tampa in like the 80s. My mom's
what did they do?
My grandfather, God rest him, passed. My dad, he's like an IT.
Okay.
So landlines, networking, setting up any of your generally office-sized printers.
Right.
Things like that. But he does well with it.
Was your family musical? Like, did you grow up with a lot of music in the house? Or?
Not directly, right? Like I have a lot of uncles. Like
Okay.
I have some great uncles who were like Nashville recording artists.
Was that what you were exposed to at an early age?
And at times, that's the thing, is it was little moments where I would you'd see them at the reunion or something, and then you'd be like, oh, okay. And then I felt like I always had a knack for like, I didn't need a lot to make like
Yeah.
a song out of it.
Sure.
Like friends, like, oh, we give you 2 notes, you'll do,
Right.
you can
Right.
form something out of that, and so that came across sometimes like growing up. My grandfather played a guitar that was called like a tres.
A what?
A tres.
Okay.
It's imagine like almost like a 12-string guitar.
Okay.
But it had 3 strings, and you would hear it in like salsa, bachata.
Oh,
like
very cool.
All kinds of like Latin music
Yeah.
styles, Afro-Cuban stuff a lot. And he would play that, and then like on the flip side, on my mom's side, I had my grandmother who was very much like church hymns,
Sure. Yeah.
Hills of Kentucky,
Yeah.
like
Bible Belt type of stuff.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. And so I kind of had those 2 things
Right.
coinciding,
Yeah.
which was weird, but I don't know.
That's where great music comes from.
I guess at the end of the day, like you end up, growing up and listening to AC/DC, Motorhead, and
Well, yeah, and it's I think there's like, I want to explore this further at some point, both a literal delta and a metaphorical delta, and the history of deltas in music, the meeting of divergent tastes, styles, instruments, whatever
kind of spider web comes out.
Well, for sure. So the blues from the Mississippi Delta, and then you go over to like Africa, and there's deltas where all sorts of different African music, and you these new types of music form where there's this convergence of different ideas, and so I think that can literally happen with geographical deltas, but in more of a kind of loose sense, the delta between your parents' lineage, their history, their musical tastes, and kind of how those manifested in you. So high school, elementary school into high school is when young men start to kind of go outside of their parents' tastes, and kind of figure out what you like.
You can always think of like, what was that first record that wasn't a hand-me-down or something? Well, in my case, the first cassette.
What was it?
It was the Lion King soundtrack.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
Was this like 1997 or something, 6, whatever it was. And the Weird Al Yankovic's Beat It album.
Weird Al Yankovic comes up a lot. Green Day Dookie comes up a lot.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like half the people that play music that have been on this show learn to play by playing to that album. Mm-hmm. I'm older than most of my friends try to learn how to play one on Injustice for All, and we're listening to a lot more than Megadeth.
I mean, musically, if you look at it from like a 2000 point of view, like there's Adam's song. Blink 182.
Yeah.
It's the same song.
Yeah.
In so many ways, like it's really insane.
Well, you get into that time frame. I remember, and it all kind of runs together. And I can't really say what came first, but I remember Operation Ivy. I remember Rancid. I remember, Green Day, Blink 182. There's all these bands that started to come out, Lookout Records, and all these different things that kind of are out around that time and spawned a lot of different stuff. So you asked me coming in, do you want to talk about music or you want to talk about beer? I'm going to try and shovel as much in as I can for our hour. Man. Well, that's always an open offer. I always love to have people back on, but I did see that at some point you were in Empire Cinema.
Sure, yeah.
So I had Mike Raimondi on here. Do you know Mike?
Yeah. No, Mike's a cool dude.
In fact,
Mike played bass.
Might have to have you sign something for me.
Oh, I think there's maybe 2 songs on there that I had any.
I don't think he had any songs involvement on there, if I recall.
Well, the thing about Empire, it's really good friend of mine, Brendan Hawk. That's his project. And he's had like a touch of a revolving door.
Yeah, he's like the Desert Sessions of Tampa.
I guess, yeah. You know what? Desert. That seems really complimentary, and I like that.
Well, there you go. It was meant as a
desert in an awesome way, not a barren way.
Yeah.
But no, he super cool guy, and so I played with him. I was in between projects. I was doing a band called Edison, and then I also was. I just kind of finished doing a band called Party Time.
Okay.
The 2 very incredibly different bands. And then I guess in between whatever was coming next, I answered a Craigslist ad and met him. And I never forget this. I had a friend who was like dropped me off.
Sure.
Really sweet girl. And I was like, hey, be cool. just like do 2 laps around the.
Let me see what's going on here.
And if I'm not standing outside around lap 2 or 3,
you can go.
you just keep driving.
Nice. This was before cell phones, or
no. I'm 32, so I don't before cell phones. I don't know if that's a real thing. For
right.
in reality.
It's all post cell phones.
Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about your schooling. The bands, that you're in. So we were going into the first albums and you mentioned Lion King. What was your, and Weird Al, get me more into the musical taste that started to launch you down the path of wanting to pick up an instrument and start playing.
Sure. So, I mean, for me, it was like early on, it was maybe like Overload, right?
Okay.
Because it was like an immediate like pivot from listening to whatever like we were talking about like your parents have. So for me it was like Queen, AC/DC,
right,
Kiss, Heart, Tom Petty. My dad went through like a really terrible that I was young enough to be caught in like the backlash of like Counting Crows, Matchbox 20.
Oh yeah, dad rock, yeah.
It was, God bless him. His lawn looked great.
Yeah, well there you go.
Were
yeah.
on point. But it did give me like this like minor affinity for it.
Sure.
And then I felt like when things really started becoming my own, it was the same sort of stuff that I think spoke to a lot of people my age. So, of course, like you bought like Hybrid Theory
right,
from Linkin Park or Follow the Leader from Korn.
Sure. What was your first guitar?
My first guitar was a Squier 20th anniversary Affinity Strat that came in the Strat starter pack that had like a maple neck that was played so much that it had actually turned green.
Nice.
Like from the sweat.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. It's crazy. So many, you don't think about how much time you spend in your room when you don't have anywhere to be.
Sure.
At 12, 13 years old.
You got nothing else to do.
He's been in there for 6 hours.
Yeah.
Is he good? I mean, the fingers are bloody.
Yeah.
He seems happy.
Exactly. If bloody fingers is the worst that's coming out of there, then we're doing okay with it.
Exactly. And then from there, it kind of grew. And then I started... I guess like pop punk started speaking to me for a period.
Yeah.
Of course there was always like a classic metal kind of like undertone to stuff. But, like everyone else, like I think Green Day Super Hits was like a thing for a second. But then I also I remember getting a copy of Incesticide from Nirvana. And that was like a complete like game changer for me, like sonically as far as what is a good sound,
right? And
that good sounds aren't always pretty.
That's a journey that I kind of go in circles on. I go back and forth from Tone and like Phil Spector, Wall of Sound, Beach Boys, Pet Sounds, Beatles type of whatever, to Converge or Gulch or some of these other bands that you're not sure if you're listening to a jet engine or a four-piece that are playing a song.
Yeah, I mean, anything that emotes, man.
Yeah,
anything that makes you have an experience.
Do you know Elliot Mayo? He works here. Yeah. So we were having this conversation yesterday. Nice, I think cool, I was like, do you think you're still going to be listening to that stuff when you're 60? And he's like, yeah, till I die. And I was like, it's interesting because I wonder if I'll age out of it or if it's something that
I don't think people should. I don't
think you should, but I just wonder.
No. I hear you. I think people can evolve in like what they listen to, but if you age out of it, I mean, that's you becoming something else. Well, not just boring, but like people oftentimes, like I had a debate with a friend the other day. We worked in we both worked in hospitality for 10, 12 years,
right?
Respectively and stuff. And, I was like, the difference between, is it something that's behind you or beneath you?
Yeah.
Right. And so I think if you're on, and so I think this kind of works with the music where if you're going on kind of a musical journey, be it of like discovering your own sound, be it as a player or a listener, because I think those are two different journeys.
Oh, well,
as a music,
I'm going to say very much
listener and a musician, what you're playing and what you're listening to, they don't always coincide.
Yes. With my caveat is for me to speak as a musician is probably, I don't have the chops to talk in that way, but I definitely can at least empathize or sympathize or relate to what you're saying because things that interest you as a player and things that interest you as a listener are different.
Absolutely.
And then there gets to be that what is technically proficient or difficult or admirable may not be pleasant to listen to. I always have my buddy Greg, who's in a Wolfface. We always talk about noodling. Like, if anything gets too close to noodling on a guitar,
the biggest waste of rehearsal time ever.
Yeah. But again, I can get behind, like, talk about dad rock. I love Nels Klein, who plays for Wilco, and he can noodle with the best of them. And I love some prog rock, prog metal type plays.
Well, that was a big thing for me. Like when we were talking about like stuff we started listening to next, me and some friends, we dove really deep. For better or for worse, into like your Dream Theater, Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, King Crimson, yes.
You listen to Hawkwind?
Yes.
Yeah.
Old Lemmy.
Yeah.
It's very good. Some of the earliest like synthesizer stuff out there.
Space rock. Very cool.
Absolutely. And just kind of that spectrum was a big part of what I felt were formative years, like that age between like 13 to like 15 or so, 16.
Yeah.
And then I felt myself like slowly trying to like dip my toe in the water of what's on the radio.
Right.
And sometimes it was good. Sometimes it was,
Yeah. I mean, I try not to divide. I try to remove boundaries and not create boundaries on as far as what I can listen to or get behind or whatever.
It's definitely an easier thing to do now more than ever.
Well, as you get older, you kind of give a shit less about what people think about what you're listening to or what t-shirts you have or any of that stuff.
Sure. Well, a lot. You should.
Yeah.
I don't know if everyone does, but you should.
Yeah. So
advertising would argue otherwise.
Yeah. Did you start playing live in high school or thereafter? I mean, did you kind of do the circuit around here?
Yeah. No. I mean, we the Tampa tour.
Well, because I have to imagine. Speaking of deltas, I have to imagine at some point your music life and your beer life had to kind of intersect somehow.
Yeah, that was probably 2019. I know around that time, my band Sun Signs, which is like one of my like primary focuses.
So I was going to ask you, what are your current?
Sun Signs would be one of the bigger focuses. We've been doing that for a while. We're in the middle of working on our second full length.
Is your full length on Bandcamp? Is it on Spotify? Is it for sale on vinyl?
You can find our first one. It was like a self-titled where we did all 12 signs of the Zodiac.
Oh, wow. I love theme records.
No, we do too. And it was a great idea when we started writing it, and it wasn't a bad idea when we stopped. But there was a point where
sometimes the excitement.
We were like, "How many we got left?"
Yeah. Well, it's like Sufjan.
What do you
Stevens
mean there might be a 13th sign? Fuck that sign.
Do you know who Sufjan Stevens is?
Sufjan Stevens. Yeah, he's gonna do all the things.
The 50 states. He made 2 states.
Illinois was a great record.
Yeah. But they're both Illinois and Michigan were great records, and then he said, "Fuck that! I'm gonna go do something else."
It was a lofty goal out the gate. But I don't know. We were determined. Maybe I don't know if in like the best ways, but we.
Are you happy with it in retrospect?
Yeah. We have some stuff happened where we weren't super happy with the master.
Okay.
At one point, and that kind of floated for a little while in the ether, and we're about to mess with re-releasing it.
Is it indie or are you on any label? Like, are you on?
No, just all of our own things. I mean, we're at a weird. I think crossroads in the music industry where you could argue labels are becoming somewhat obsolete.
Well, when I say label, I don't mean like,
No, no one's
Sony or whatever. I meant like, Keith Ulray's New Granada or things
absolutely.
like that. Yeah.
But I do think it's paramount and great to have somebody who believes in your sound and helps you develop. And I've seen Keith do that for, several bands around town where it kind of helps push them to the next little,
give them a little bit of direction.
Plateau, direction. I've had a project called Nine Horn that he, would give me little pointers on send out a press like release like this, or, if you're going to reach out to this blog, like maybe approach it this way.
Right.
And he was great with that stuff, man. But to me, that's kind of it, right? You're looking for like the clout, the liaison. It's the same reason, like, some national agent who's working with a booker around town, whoever it might be, of the 3 or 4 lucky enough to be the ones who mess around with those guys because they do that. They lock in with somebody.
Right. Yeah.
And then that's just like, that's their conduit for better or for worse.
Right.
That's the conduit. And they kind of get people to fight over like a bone for it, you know? And so he helps a lot with that. And as far as growing bands in that direction, he helped foster that. And so you get a little bit more clout if you're going to reach out to somebody and it says, we're with this guy. It's kind of like a secondary authentication, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Like, hey, we don't suck.
Sound like
we don't suck so
my
much.
Bitcoin app
Our credit score
yeah.
is pretty high. We got this label pushing us,
Sure.
right? Be it local or whatever.
Right.
It kind of raises your band credit score.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
It's interesting. I never thought of it in that way, but that makes a lot of sense.
They'll overlook you 100%. So if like, you know, you got some guy who's got 1,200 likes, 1,400 likes, whatever it is, they'll completely blow over the band that's like 400 likes. Far be it from the fact that those 400 are way more real and substantial,
right,
and organically grown than the person with the 1,200 or
sure
4,200, whatever number.
Sure.
You know, a lot of those things get bolstered these days.
You're talking to an attorney fighting for personal injury cases and DUI cases. I know all about
bolstering
bullshit optimization and boosting posts and all that crap.
We gotta
so
nail these optics.
I fully get it. So I kind of got you off topic though, because we're talking about the intersection of your music career and getting into the beer world. You're saying 2018, 2019 Sun Signs. So
we did a cider with Cigar City Cider and Mead. And then there was, you know, I think it was
like a collab.
Kind of, yeah. Like they call it.
I love that. I want to do that so bad
cider.
with this podcast.
And it was great.
Yeah.
Hey, talk to me, man.
Okay.
But we did that, and it was very like low key, off the cuff. But then I don't know, 2 years ago or something like that, with that band Ninehorn, we did a beer release with Tampa Bay Brewing Company, which is the brew pub in Ybor.
Yeah.
And subsequently, I ended up working there for 2 years.
Right.
Like, you know, a year after that or whatever. So I would call that my biggest intersection in the beer community, because I got involved with it, but, you know, I was like a front of house guy. I wasn't like brewing, and I was never a home brewer.
Right.
You know, I was somebody who went in and just like, this wasn't like, I didn't have a bunch of buddies who were all like, let's figure out beer together. So it was very much
that's
like,
definitely one way to get into it, but that's not the only way to get into it.
Absolutely,
I mean, I've had Joey Redner on. I had the Magnanimous guys on last week, and so there's different entry points, it seems.
No, a million ways to go.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of people use that terrible phrase like there's 100 ways to skin a cat.
Yeah.
You know, there is part of me that thinks truly, anyone who's ever skinned a cat will probably tell you there's like 4.
Yeah.
You know, if you have more than 5 options on how
you're
to
just
skin,
getting kinky with
you're
that.
just being weird with
and that's
the cat,
a lot of
man.
cats. And
How did you find so many
that's
cats
just fucked up.
to nail these
You got issues.
techniques? So we did that. We had the beer collab with Tampa Bay Brewing Company. It was a double red IPA called Face Melter, and it was Ninehorn, Thunderclap, and Meat Wound.
Oh wow!
So it was.
Now is Ninehorn in that musical genre?
Yeah.
Then I got to get on that, because that's my bag. I love Meat Wound, and
no, they're not. It wasn't as
heavy or
like chaotic. It was heavy, but it was more like it was a short-lived project, and it was very much like a Queens of the Stone Age sort of thing. It's just like, even if you're gonna go hear like you know, the second-rate version or something.
It's like pizza. Bad pizza is still good
Yeah,
pizza.
Queens of Stone Age is like pizza.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, good. Good. I'm glad we could agree on that.
Absolutely.
So then after Tampa Bay Brewing Company, what happens?
Well, the world ended for several months.
So that was right around that time that you transitioned?
Kind of, yeah. It wasn't intentional. I managed to have, God, I can't talk. I managed to have a very validating experience where Tampa Bay Brewing Company was nice enough to ask me to come back.
Okay.
Granted, this was after about 7 months of like
floundering.
You couldn't find work. If you took work, like at what risk?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like a lot of people, I was like, oh, I'll become like I'll deliver some groceries or do this. And then you're just like, do I want to be near people?
Right.
You know, it was scary stuff.
Free falling, just no precedent, no instructions, no manual, just
and
figuring
people would
out.
say that to you as if it was supposed to bring you solace.
What's that?
Like, oh, this is unprecedented.
Well,
Oh, it's unprecedented. Cool. Well, hey guys, it's unprecedented. We're good now. It's unprecedented.
yeah, I mean, I hear you, but I can tell you maybe I'm wrong or maybe I'm alone in this view, but when everybody is going through the ringer, it eases the going through the ringer yourself a little bit more. When you're not being singled out and persecuted and shit on.
No, absolutely. It made a difference, but it still happened.
Yeah.
It still happened,
sure.
right? Because there were a string of dudes who I was working at the Ybor Brew Pub doing like one-offs, experimental beers. Like I was doing a lot of treatments and like keeping logs of that.
Yeah.
And so I was like the extra guy at the extra place of a company.
Right.
That became very lean very quick.
Yeah, so you're the first.
So I was
go.
an easy clip, and like in some ways I got it, but in other ways, like the pay was not great, and I very much accepted the job like in an indentured sort of way. Like, okay, I'm learning.
You're not saving a lot of money getting rid of me. Is the kind of the point you're making?
Right? Yeah, I'm not. If I'm what's going to save you, you've got big problems.
Bigger problems than
at that point in time is how I felt.
Yeah.
But I kind of took that 7 months to put my head down and say, you know what. And I had some friends come together from around town, some guys from Berry House, Angry Chair, a couple like just really good friends. And here's my fridge. Here's some homebrew equipment.
Sure.
And I just kept working on stuff at home. And
that's what I'm noticing about it.
Trying to put my head down and just like, you know what? I'm not going to wait for somebody's permission. And
maybe it's not this way across the board, but you could speak to this for me. What I've heard a lot is there's very much a collaborative, helpful kind of fabric, at least from the people that I spoke to. Maybe there's exceptions or caveats here and there, but like the magnanimous guys, like their boiler or whatever they like, their furnace or whatever it was, someone lent them that, or so there seems to be, with attorneys, like everybody's like, I'm not sharing this with you. I'm not,
unless I legally have to.
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah. But I mean, it seems like people are kind of cool to help the competition out a little bit in this world.
Right. So
would you agree or no?
I would. I do think, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, even more so. There were less people. The scene has definitely blown up in the last decade. And with that, I think that some people are a little more close to the vest than they used to be. But like we talked about earlier, it seems like everybody worked at Cigar City at some point.
Yeah.
It's that fraternity. It's that.
Do you know Charlie Mears and Mike Lucasina and Tim Ogden and all those guys?
Tim Ogden's the first brewer who hired me.
Yeah. He's a badass. I love his band too.
Dude, he's great.
Yeah.
I love that guy. And I will always be grateful that he was the guy who said yes, right? Because like you said, there's a lot of ways to get into that side of the industry. And somebody has to say yes. It's like when you're trying to wait table, you're trying to do anything.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like it's like a catch-22. Nobody wants to be the first person to hire you, but you have to get hired somewhere to continue being hired. Yeah. Right. So someone has to.
They don't want to hire anybody with no experience, but you have to have started somewhere. Sure.
So it's a really good way to like weed people out. I mean, it just took persistence. I spent, getting out of the beer industry. I floated around. I did a job with Holy Hog where I was like a beer buyer. Yeah. For a minute.
Oh wow.
And I got to know a lot of people in downtown. And then from there, I started working at a restaurant called Anise. That is,
for sure.
That was it was a period of time.
Yeah.
That's all anybody who works at Anise can say is like, you know what? That was a chapter.
Yeah.
It started, it ended, but that was a chapter in a book.
Yeah. It was a fun chapter. They made wicked Moscow mules. I used to, and that burger was
made a lot
insane.
Of Moscow mules.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. The shrimp tacos. Get out of
here.
Oh,
just all of it. The buns, the sticky buns. So good. Did you know Jamie Rogers? She had the Doxa place right around the corner.
Yes.
She's a friend of a friend. So
No. She's super cool. I have no idea what's going on with her. That's like it became a fashion guy.
She still does it. She's somewhere else now.
No, yeah, but it became like Kyle Kilgore's spot who does like fashion design.
Yeah.
And then I think it's an ice cream or some kind of thing. I don't know. It's like a burger place now.
My only reason to go there was Anise, so I don't even go.
I pass it all the time. I don't even park by it. And sometimes there's a spot.
Yeah.
You know how hard it is to find a spot in downtown on the street?
Bananas, yeah.
Right? So it's like occasionally I see a spot there, and almost out of respect to Anise, I'm like, let's just check let's go a few streets down. Maybe there's something else. I don't even want to be near it.
Right. Don't want to trample on the old ground. So,
absolutely.
So get me to where you're at currently. Work-wise.
Work-wise, yeah. It's all work, it feels like sometimes.
Yeah.
But no, so the furlough went on 7 months. They asked me to come back, and I was in the at their production facility now. And, I don't know, it was strange. It was as if they had me come back just because they liked me. Right. And that's part of their answer.
There's worse reasons.
Right. And it's like, it's such a weird feeling because it felt super complimentary. And I still feel complimentary. I've got no bad blood with those guys. Like I got a lot of love for that crew. I really do. But I just kind of like felt this weird impasse where I was just like, I don't know. Cause I'd already, it was like getting broken up with.
Yeah.
And you spend like 7 months on the mend.
No, for sure.
Right. And you finally like go out to a few parties, you make out with like another brewery. And then, and then that's when
over the clothes, under the clothes.
And then you get a phone call and they're just like, hey, I heard you were starting to move on with life.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got called back there and I spent about a month and a half there and I just didn't really see what role I was supposed to play. And they were just kind of so busy that I was like, no, you need some green dudes to come in and like do some of these jobs and like, cause I feel like I'm
past that point.
I'm not past
no
it.
condescension, but just.
Well, that's like what I said earlier, the behind and beneath.
Beneath, yeah.
I feel like it's something a little bit behind me, but it's not beneath me.
Sure.
By any means.
I like that.
And so I just, like, what is the strategy? And they're a very close-knit group. And part of working at like a different facility, you came in and it just like, they didn't let you forget that you weren't from their place a little bit. And so I had gotten the call from Florida Avenue. And yeah, they made an offer that was better.
And our offer you couldn't refuse.
Basically, yeah. They mobbed it up real good. No, but they did. And it was just like an opportunity to just like.
So is this last fall or when is this?
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. November 16th was my starting date. It was very strange. I had a phone call. I called the head brewer, West Chase, the next day. And then, unfortunately I had some like family things that went down. Got through that and took like a personal day.
Yeah.
I went over there and kind of like Dave, the owner, I gave him like a sit down to just be like, hey man, we're cool. And I don't know.
What's the discussion? Did they say like, here's where we see you. Here's what we want you to do. Was it similar to what you had been doing? Was it new? What was this stuff?
It was just offering more opportunity to use better equipment, larger scale equipment.
So that's my question.
More of a learning, because my thing is if I'm not, it's either money or learning, right? And I'd love to have both. That's like the real goal.
Well, sure, yeah. The delta.
The delta.
Between beneath and behind and the delta, we got to write a self-help book here today.
Oh my God.
Anyway, go ahead.
Take that, Osho. But so I felt the opportunity to learn at bare minimum, to learn at a place that offered some better benefits. And that was stuff I was thinking about, is just like, I don't have a 401k. I don't have health insurance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And at the time I did it. I do now,
sure.
Which is great. Yay.
Yeah. Go get your COVID shot.
Pay the machine.
Yeah.
But it, so that came into play and it was a simple thing of like, do you guys need 2 weeks? Like, cause you don't have me doing
anything. Yeah.
Like you could hire someone tomorrow to do what what you're choosing to have me do.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I just,
do you get the opportunity to be creative at work? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Use your kind of signature, your style, get melted into the product in any way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that happens inevitably, right? Because the product may improve or worsen based on your personal process, right? Because at one point you're making beer, it's all the same. What separates two different breweries is their process.
Right.
What extra steps do they take to keep oxidation out? What extra steps are taken to prove or maintain yeast viability? What extra steps are taken to, make sure, fresh ingredients are going into stuff? Like what kind of practices are in place? That's what separates everyone.
Garbage in, garbage out. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why I found it super interesting. Not the forest fire part. That was terrible. But the resilience beer that Sierra Nevada did, where they had all these people make the same exact recipe. Yeah. And then, because that was the first time you ever had a control between all these breweries. I wish somebody would do that again. Right. Because then you could go and you could be like, they're doing this with their water. Yeah. Okay, that's the thing.
It'll get there.
Sense of like the actual practices versus like, we're going to put like, 2/3 of this liquid is now fruit.
Right.
puree.
Right.
Or just like you're so buried in adjuncts that you couldn't tell there was an off flavor if you tried.
Well, I mean, you look at wine, for instance, and
Sure.
wine's, renaissance is centuries old. Beer's renaissance, is really not. So I just think there's a lot more ground to be covered.
Well, it's rolling back around. A lot of people keep saying, lagers are going to make this like triumphant return over the IPA.
Yeah.
People are going to want like that cleaner.
I had a crawl, like a what's a crawl? It was
like a bar crawl?
No, KRAL. It's like a Czech something. I had it at Magnanimous, and it was insane, so good. And the flavor was different for me. So, but I'm such a newbie in this world. So
sure.
I want to talk a little bit more about the music. So with COVID and the shutdown and all that stuff, obviously not playing live that much. Did you write at all? Were you being creative in that way during that period of time?
Yeah. I had a piano in my house for a long time, and so I could poke at it, but I never really played. So I did spend at one point a solid 4 of the 7 months like
learning to play a little bit,
3-4 hours a day in between like walking the dog or whatever, and it helped give me structure. That was my biggest struggle in that furlough, was like I instantly had no structure.
Right.
And nowhere to be, and you didn't want to spend any money or make plans because you didn't know what was
how long you
tomorrow.
Had to.
If I left the state, could I come back in?
Right.
Or whatever. It was, as we said, unprecedented.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely spent some time kind of just expanding sonically how I kind of heard things a little bit. Really, just going back and like you just go re-listen to your entire record collection if you have the time.
Yeah.
Next time the world shuts down, take a moment and just. From top to bottom, and you'll find some things, and there's something really interesting about, I feel like how people hear things change over time, much like taste buds.
Yeah, more mature palate, a more mature. Yeah,
but I can't tell you how many records I've sat down with, and like all of a sudden I'm like, has this piano part always been
there? Yeah,
but it's like I started playing piano, so I started noticing it more. And things kind of like when you I bought a Honda, and now I was like, when did everyone get Hondas?
I go down these rabbit holes and like
there's something about that it's like a phenomenon. It feels like,
for sure. I got into this whole Tom Petty keyboards versus Bruce Springsteen keys debate in my head about which
you got to keep that in your head, man.
I got someone jumped on me for talking about what's better, and better's never the right word to use, but maybe favorite or what appeals to you more, but. I like picking out these little things and kind of going down the rabbit holes with them. So the act that you're currently kind of is your main bag right now. Say it again.
Sun Signs.
Okay. Now, is that your baby? Is that something you created, or is it kind of
me and my friend Christian Stewart?
And did you guys in coming together? Was it like we want to do this type of thing, or do you just kind of figure it out as you go?
Well, Christian's a very gifted songwriter. And it became a thing of we wanted Kelvin Hampton's our drummer. He's a fantastic drummer. We have Jordan Cronster on guitar, and it kind of serendipitously came together as the 4-piece. But we spent our first 1.5, 2 years writing as a 3-piece, and it was very much me and Kelvin coming in and just kind of, we want to do whatever like uplifts your song. We're not trying to push our ideas through.
Sure.
It. At times. You get a riff in, what I mean? You get, you influence, but truly it's his vehicle, so we just work really hard to do more to accentuate and help him find like that sound in his head versus like, I've got to be heard.
Right. It's not a
and that's an effort. You know what I mean? Like over time, we've been playing together for about 8 years now. And in that time we've gotten better at it.
Right.
You always think you're going to be this like mature musician, but at one point you just want to be loud. At one point you think something is very cool when you die on that hill at that particular rehearsal, pushing it. But yeah. So we're in the process of, like I said, starting our third full length, which working title, we're in the demoing. So it's very early. But we oddly enough I think we just took the break to kind of space out.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of years
That's good too.
Just kind of on top of each other. And I wouldn't say like, there are probably more dedicated people.
Yeah.
But it gave us a chance to like step away from it. You spend like 4 years writing and recording a record, and then you play shows for 2-3 years around like the state and stuff, and then you just realize that like 6 years of your life went by or something.
Well, and it's kind of,
I mean?
it's kind of an arrested development too, because a lot of times when you're writing, performing, all this stuff, your life kind of is in the stasis until
It can be that way.
Yeah.
And so I think we all had to take a step back to grow up a little bit.
Right.
I guess get some of our other.
So what's your
aspects
status in that
together.
regard? Married, kids, anything like that?
Engaged.
Oh, nice.
Um,
Date set?
We're thinking sometime, 22.
Okay.
No big rush.
Back when things open again.
Yeah, we want to
Anything worth doing is worth doing right, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, you got to come see me, the divorce attorney. So you got to.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, take your time.
I got your card.
Yeah.
No, she's great. And yeah, we're 2 cats and a dog and a
You
little house.
got your
in the
hands
Heights,
full, yeah.
and I love it.
And she's supportive. She's down with the
Absolutely.
brew world, the music world.
Oh, she's super supportive.
Yeah.
And she's she kind of gets the types like, we shared a service hall in
Okay.
Ybor for a while. So if we had 2 years where we both worked in a place that shared a service hall. So that was great.
Yeah.
But
You get to trade a little bit of paint before you.
exactly.
Yeah, nice.
Pretend we're in high school.
If you're not rubbing, you're not
Fantastic.
raising. Yeah.
What happened to your mustache? You rubbed off.
Yeah.
But so we that's been going very well.
Well, good. Well, good. So future with the music, so the album, do you think that's coming out this calendar year, next calendar year?
Probably next calendar year.
So 2022 is going to be a big year for you.
I'm hoping.
Yeah. And as far as Brew World, just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, you have any designs long term to your own label type of situation, or just take it as it comes?
A lot of people do. I'm very happy, like helping to push someone's vision. I think in time I may reach an inevitable point where it's like I gotta do my own thing. But at this point, I'm just happy doing something well.
Well, that's good.
Instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, I'd rather this is your wheel. We're gonna make this the best wheel in town.
That's a the vital part of the wheel is, the spokes that help kind of keep it going.
A spokesman, if you will.
So, well, thank you so much for coming in. I appreciate it. I know your day kind of got sideways there at the end with having to be a company man, and I got my ass handed to me by a judge just before. I keep scheduling these right after getting just slaughtered in court, and I gotta space it out a little bit. But
your energy was good.
Well, I appreciate you coming by. I'm gonna make it a point of stopping by and seeing you at the spot, man. And that's kind of my goal, is to kind of get to know this world and get the world to know these people and who are the players, who are the spots, and everything else like that. And again, thank you so much for coming down.
Absolutely.
All right, you have a good night.
Take it easy.